The wind of the far west had never known how to be gentle. It swept through the scorched meadows, whistled past rotting fences and moats, and swept red dust into the evening sky as if this entire land were trying to hide something. At the end of the dirt trail leading to the gray mountains lay a forgotten farm. Its owner was Silas Reed, the man the town called the Silent Rancher. Some said he used to be a gunslinger. Others claimed the person he loved had died in a robbery, leaving him no longer wanting to hear his own voice. Clara Whitmore knew nothing of those rumors. The night she fled, she knew only one thing. If she did not leave the town before dawn, she would be forced to become the wife of a man she despised and feared. The wedding had already been completely arranged by her father. The groom was Victor Harlan, a man with an aristocratic smile, but eyes as cold as steel. He did not love her. He loved the piece of land her father had promised to hand over after the wedding. The night before the wedding, Clara overheard the sentence that made her walk through the iron gates forever. After the wedding, Clara will learn how to be silent. She ran all night in a wedding dress with a torn hem, clutching to her chest a canvas bag containing only a few silver coins, an old photograph of her mother, and the ivory comb she had left behind. By the afternoon of the following day, when her legs had almost lost all sensation, she saw a low wooden fence emerge through the red dust. An old farm under the shadow of a withered oak tree, so lonely that it seemed to have stood there for 100 years just waiting for someone to knock on the door. Clara took a few more steps, then collapsed. The last thing she saw was the silhouette of a person riding a black horse, approaching from the setting sun, his figure like a ghost, stepping out from the dust. "Please, do not take me back," she whispered. The man did not answer. He simply bent down and picked her up with strong arms. In her delirium, Clara smelled leather, wood smoke, and scorching sun, and heard his heart beating very slowly, very heavily, like a door that had been shut tight for far too long. Clara woke up in a small room, warmly scented with burning wood. Beside the bed were a bowl of water, a piece of bread, and a neatly folded wet towel. Out on the porch, the man was chopping wood under the moonlight. Every swing of the axe was decisive, as if he were not chopping wood but rather venting his anger on some memory. When she spoke up to thank him, he did not reply. He took a small chalkboard hanging next to the fireplace and wrote a single word in white chalk: "Silas. Can you not speak?" His hand holding the chalk paused. A flash of pain swept through his eyes. Not anger, not sadness, but a pain so familiar that it no longer needed a name. He continued writing. "You rest tonight. Leave tomorrow morning. This place is not for runaways." "I have nowhere else to go," Clara said. "I have endured a house full of people, yet no one loved me. A lonely farm does not frighten me." Silas looked at her for a very long time. Finally, he wrote, "1 week. After that, you leave." As he turned away, Clara saw a thin scar running from behind his ear down to his neck. That scar made his silence no longer seem like coldness. It was like a scorched wooden gate, still standing there, but allowing no one to step through. The first days were a harsh trial. Clara burned the bread, spilled the milk, and was almost knocked over by the old goat. Silas witnessed everything without laughing and without scolding. He merely silently fixed what she had ruined, something that sometimes made her angrier than being reprimanded. "You could say that I am clumsy," she blurted out in frustration one afternoon. Silas looked at the tangled knot in her hands, then slowly wrote, "You still have not given up." Clara's throat choked up. No one in her family had ever praised her like that. They only praised her when she was obedient, dressed beautifully, smiled at the right time, bowed her head at the right time, and stayed silent at the right time. Yet this man who spoke not a single word saw the only thing she was trying to hold on to: courage. From that day on, the farm began to change in very small ways. A vase of wildflowers on the windowsill, the scent of freshly baked cornbread replaced burnt coffee. Silas's old shirts were mended with careful stitches. And sometimes, in the house that was only used to silence, the sound of Clara singing softly echoed. The silence between them was no longer terrifying. It became a peaceful space, where Clara did not have to explain too much and Silas did not have to pretend that he was fine. One night during heavy rain, Clara accidentally dropped a picture frame that was facing down on the wall. In the photograph was Silas from many years ago, younger, with brighter eyes and the corners of his lips seemingly smiling. Beside him was a blonde girl wearing a white dress. Both stood under the oak tree, when it was still green with leaves. Silas stepped in and snatched the picture frame from her hands, not forcefully enough to hurt her, but enough for her to understand she had touched a forbidden place. "Who is she?" Clara asked softly. His fingers gripped the chalk until they turned pale white. "Lydia, my fiancée." The room seemed to grow cold. He walked to the door, looking out into the thick black rain. When he turned back, his eyes were no longer cold. They were empty. He wrote, his handwriting trembling. "The robbers came on the day I went to sell cattle. I returned too late. I found her under the oak tree. She was still breathing. I called her name, but I could not save her. After that night, I no longer wanted to hear my own voice." Now Clara understood. Silas's silence was not because he had no words to say, but because every word led him back to the moment he lost the one he loved. She stepped forward, very slowly, not touching him, merely placing her hand on the edge of the table, next to his hand. "I am sorry, not for seeing the photograph, but because you have had to live alone with that pain for far too long." Amidst the sound of rain and the firelight, Clara saw a tiny crack in the layer of stone encasing his heart. 1 week passed, then 2 weeks. Silas did not remind her to leave, and Clara did not ask. He began to answer her with gestures that did not require the chalkboard. When she was tired, he placed a glass of water in front of her. When she got a cactus spine stuck in her hand, he gently removed it and bandaged the wound. When she was sad, he simply sat on the porch with her watching the sunset, letting his silent presence speak for everything. Then, one afternoon, as Clara tried riding the mare named Belle, a snake crawled across the path, causing it to panic. Clara fell to the ground. Silas rushed over, kneeling beside her, his gray eyes filled with panic, and in an uncontrollable moment, he let out a hoarse sound. "Clara." She froze. That was the first time she heard his voice, deep, dry, and crumbling like a door being opened after a long time. Just a single name, but to Clara it was more tender than any flowery words of love she had ever heard in her life. Silas immediately let go and stepped back. But Clara grabbed his wrist. "Do not be afraid. Your voice hurts no one." "The last time I called a woman's name," he said, every word seemingly cutting through his throat, "she died in my arms." "I am still here," she said. Those 2 words fell between them like a promise. From that day on, Silas began to speak again. At first it was just short sentences. "Be careful. Let me. It is going to rain." Then gradually, on windless nights, he told her about the dream he once shared with Lydia, turning the farm into a warm place for those with nowhere left to go. In return, Clara told him about her late mother and about her father, who only saw her as a final asset to bargain with life. "Clara," he said one night, "before you arrived, I was merely existing, not living." She placed her hand on his. Silas turned his hand over, intertwining his calloused fingers with hers. There was no confession of love. There were no hasty kisses. There were only 2 broken people, believing for the first time that life still had another path besides suffering. But the past never lets go easily. One late autumn morning, Silas discovered strange hoofprints near the fence. 3 horses, one bearing city-style iron horseshoes. By the afternoon, Victor Harlan appeared at the gate, with 2 henchmen, his leather gloves so clean that they looked out of place amid the red dust. "My dear Clara," he smiled, "you made me search so hard. Get in the carriage. Right now." Silas did not pull her behind his back. He did not speak for her. He did not turn her into someone who needed saving, but had no voice. He just stood there, as steadfast as the land itself, letting her decide for herself. Clara looked at the man who had made her tremble with fear for many months. Then she took a deep breath. "No, I will not go with you. I do not love you. I do not belong to you, and I am no longer the girl who can be used for exchange." The smile on Victor's face vanished. "Then I will take you back another way." Everything happened in an instant. One thug drew a gun. Silas pushed Clara down behind the water barrel and shot that man's hand. Victor lunged forward, grabbed her, and slapped her to the wooden floor. Something flared up inside Silas. Not blind rage, but old pain turned into determination. He rushed over, blocking Victor from Clara. The 2 men grappled on the ground. A knife blade slashed across his arm, blood soaking his sleeve red. But he did not retreat. He knocked the knife out of Victor's hand, pinning him to the ground. "Get off my farm. If you ever come back, I will hand you over to the sheriff, along with your forced marriage papers and for assaulting a woman. She is not worth losing your life over." Victor hissed. Silas looked at him. "She is worth coming back to life for." That sentence made Clara burst into tears, not out of fear, but because for the first time in her life, someone looked at her not as a burden, not as property, not as a beautiful dress in a luxurious room, but as a human being worth choosing, worth protecting, and worth loving. The red dust swallowed Victor's shadow on the dirt trail. Clara washed his wound with clean water and strong liquor, her hands trembling so much that Silas had to place his remaining hand over hers. "You were very brave. I was terrified. Courage does not mean having no fear. It means you still stand firm even though you are afraid." Clara bowed her head, her forehead lightly touching his hand. "I do not want to run anymore, Silas. My whole life I have only run from what others wanted to turn me into." He wiped the tears from her cheek. "Then stay. Stay because you want to. Not because you have nowhere else to go, not out of fear, not out of gratitude to me. Stay, because this place could be your home." Clara looked around the old wooden house, the vase of wildflowers, the half-mended shirt, the warm fire in the hearth. Outside, the wind still blew across the meadow, but it no longer sounded like a cry. "Then I will stay." Winter arrived slowly at the Reed farm. Silas taught Clara how to stockpile firewood and how to read the clouds for snowstorms. Clara taught Silas how to smile again, not grand smiles, but small, fleeting smiles at the corners of his lips, enough to make his whole face less lonely. One day, Clara found flower seeds in Lydia's old box. She brought them to him. "Can I plant these in the spring?" Silas looked at the box for a long time, a piece of his past he had never dared to touch. But seeing Clara cherish it with utter respect, he understood that loving someone new did not mean betraying the one who was lost. Sometimes it was a way for beautiful things that had yet to bloom to continue living. "Spring," he nodded. "We will plant them together." The word "we" sounded warmer than any fire. The following spring, in front of the wooden house under the oak tree, the first flowers bloomed, yellow, white, and pale purple, fluttering in the wind. The old oak tree that seemed dead also sprouted a few young shoots. "Silas, look!" Clara cheered like a child. He looked up at the trembling young leaves on the dry branches, then smiled softly. It was no longer a fleeting smile, but a genuine smile. Warm, aching, grateful, and alive. "You have brought the spring back here," he said. "No, it was always here. You just forgot to look." He reached out and touched her cheek, as gently as touching the most precious thing in his life. "Clara, I cannot promise that there will be no more storms in this life, but I promise one thing. If you choose to stay by my side, you will never have to stand alone again. And you," she whispered, "you will not have to be silent alone anymore either." He leaned down and kissed her. That kiss was not rushed, not possessive, and nothing like the forced vows she once feared. It was as gentle as the season's first rain on parched earth, like a promise that true love imprisons no one, but gives them a place to willingly return to. From then on, people no longer called that place the haunted farm. Passers-by saw kitchen smoke rising every afternoon, saw flowers blooming around the porch, saw a woman riding a horse across the meadow with her laughter echoing in the wind, and saw the once silent rancher standing beside her, his eyes no longer bearing the color of loss, but the color of peace. Clara had run away from a loveless wedding. Silas had run away from his own memories, but at the end of that dusty dirt road, they found each other. From the ashes of the past, they built a home. From silence, they rediscovered their voices. From wounds, they planted a garden, because sometimes love does not arrive like a storm that sweeps people away, but comes as a hand quietly reaching out in the dark night, patiently waiting for us to be brave enough to hold on. If this story touched your heart, please do not forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell, so you do not miss deeply moving love stories every week. Please leave a comment sharing your feelings about Silas and Clara, and do not forget to send this story to a person who you think also deserves to be loved. Thank you for listening to the final lines. See you again in the next story.